Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Joshua and I'll be walking you through this part of the data visualization module. So this is part 1, so we'll be going over basic visualization concepts as well as the Matplotlib and Seaborn libraries. So to just get a general background of data visualization, there are multiple goals. You can explore data, you can analyze data, and you can present data. So these are different ways on which you want to view data visualization. And another question that I think is helpful is to ask yourself, what would you like to show? You might want to show relationships. You might want to show the composition of the data that you have. You might also want to show a distribution of a certain variable. You also might want to compare data with relation to over time, or if you want to compare different variables in different categories. So there's many different ways about how this can be very useful. This is a really good chart. Since there's so many different types of data visualizations, it's really good to kind of visualize and to ask yourself, what do you want to show? And then you can go through the flowchart and see which chart might be the best chart for you. I think this is a very good resource. So going right into introductions about the libraries, we'll go through Matplotlib first. Usually Matplotlib is mostly used for quick plotting. And if you know pandas, this is what you use. And it's usually the most commonly used library in the data science community. It's very easy to set up, but the visual presentation tends to be very simple compared to other tools. Installation should be pretty straightforward. Usually you import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT, and that's how people import this package. And then giving a brief introduction into Seaborn, very similar to Matplotlib. One of the only differences is that you have more options as well as you have better visuals, arguably. It tends to be simpler than other tools as well, as in part 2 we'll go over more complicated data tools, but Seaborn has more advanced visuals that you might be interested in. And again, installation is very straightforward. You import Seaborn as S&S. It's just convention to import it that way. So we're going to go to the Jupyter notebook here. So here is the Jupyter notebook for Matplotlib and Seaborn. Feel free to access it in the DataX website. And then for Matplotlib and Seaborn, we've decided to use 4 main plots that are commonly used in industry. So that would be the Scatterplot, a bar chart, a histogram, and a line plot. So these are different plots that we chose. Looking at the setup, so we're going to look at the data set that I used for this exercise. So if you go to this website here, you can access the data set yourself. Here I've scrolled down to where I got the data set. So this is Airbnb. This is a public website where you can access all of Airbnb's files and data that they use for their website. So specifically, they have data about their listings, data about calendar for listings, as well as detailed review data. So I downloaded all of these files for our demonstration here for Matplotlib and Seaborn. So after importing these files, we will put them into pandas data frames. So firstly, we're going to import the data sets. We're going to import the packages. So we're going to import NumPy and pandas, and then we're going to put them into their corresponding data frames. After putting them into their corresponding data frames here, we are going to put them into different data frames, each for the separate plots that we're making. Again, we're making 4 different types of commonly used plots. So that's the scatter plot, the bar chart, the histograms, and the line plot. And we're going to do each of these in the Matplotlib and Seaborn libraries. So for data frame A, we are making a scatter plot. So we're measuring the reviews per month of a post versus the number of listings total under that host. For each neighborhood, we have the average reviews per month and the average calculated host listings count. Basically, what we want to do is kind of measure the listings, number of listings a host makes on average in that neighborhood versus the number of reviews that listing, an average listing in that neighborhood gets per month. So does the number of listings correlate with the number of reviews per month for that listing? For the second chart, we're going to measure the total number of listings for Airbnb under that neighborhood in San Francisco, and then another bar chart under a specific room type. And then we'll look at the histogram. So we're looking at the distribution of listings under particular price ranges for each of these different room types. And then we're going to make a line plot. So we're going to compare the average price of the listing in San Francisco in Airbnb over time. So let's go on to Matplotlib. All we have to do is to import a column of a pandas data frame here, .xlabel, .ylabel, and title to be able to make a nice looking plot. So this is what you get with Matplotlib when you're trying to make a scatter plot. And then the syntax is basically the same. So instead of plot.scatter, you run plot or plt.barh, which will make a horizontal bar plot. So for Matplotlib, they have a whole bunch of these different functions for each type of plot. Plot.figure really helps, especially when you want to resize your graph. So I put in random numbers, so 20 and 10. It has this ratio. If you play around with the numbers a little bit, it'll make it look like where you want it to be. Again, the arguments for each one of these different functions differ by the function itself. Plt.histogram only has one required document, and that is x. So x is the array of, which makes sense because a histogram only takes in one variable here. And again, you can import other functions here too. Feel free to look through this notebook for Matplotlib. And then going on to Seaborn, it's pretty straightforward as well. So first you import Seaborn as S&S, and then you do pretty much the same steps as Matplotlib. The resulting graph here is slightly different. The other chart here, so this is Matplotlib's Scatterplot, and this is Seaborn Scatterplot. And as we scroll through here in each of the different plots, you can see that each of the plots are slightly different. I encourage you to play around for yourself and to see what different advantages Seaborn has over Matplotlib, because personally I like using Seaborn. Because of the visual aesthetic, of course, also the colors that they use automatically is very easy to manipulate. I do like the lines here. You can easily put SNS set color codes here to change the color. You can also do SNS.set style, white grid. So these are things that it's a little more difficult to make in Matplotlib, but it's very simple here in Seaborn. This code is structured slightly differently than the previous code on the previous 4 plots. For the Seaborn, I decided to make this in Pythonic code, and I decided to make Matplotlib in non-Pythonic code. So what does that mean exactly? So I've put both of these different types of plots. Actually, it's the same type of plot, but under different libraries, side by side. So this is Seaborn, and this is Matplotlib. In Matplotlib, you can also do this in a Pythonic code, but however, I want to demonstrate that this is non-Pythonic. That means that you're just running PLT, and you're running a function, and you're doing this one by one in a way. You have to run all of these lines and then do plot.show. When you store it in a variable, that's setting AX here is equal to SNS.scatterplot. AX is just a name that we set here. You can call these functions onto that variable to add more attributes. So for example, instead of doing .xlabel, .ylabel, .title, you can do .set xlabel equals this, ylabel equals that. So it's much easier just to add on here.